Hello, it's Cherie from Big Notes Get Votes, and I hope that you are having a lovely Saturday. I am here in Auckland, New Zealand, and I come live every Saturday to you if I'm not on tour to answer some of the most common questions that I get asked. Now, I'm a professional singer and a vocal coach, and in advance of working with new clients, I ask them to complete an artist questionnaire. One of the questions, there are many, that are well-being focused and give me an opportunity to learn how people navigate through practice and look after their voice and all sorts of different things, lifestyle questions. One of the questions I ask is, what is your biggest fear or frustration in relation to your voice, your singing, or your performance ability? So each week I've been taking one of those questions and answering them, and I'm going to do that again today for you. So today's question is, let me read it exactly. They were worried about permanently damaging my voice or losing it. Now, this is one that definitely comes up a lot, and I think it's important to address it because it's not like a one size fits all situation. Firstly, we are in a very unique position where our instruments are housed within our bodies. So a lot of what goes on impacts how our voice performs. So the best way that we can navigate or avoid losing or definitely permanently damaging your voice is what we're going to chat about today. And there are three perspectives that I'd like to talk about that definitely help. So the first one is releasing tension. I know it sounds obvious, but tension is the enemy of the singer, and you really need to be able to relax so that the right muscles are doing the job that you're asking them to do. So understanding what works for you and what works against you, and tension is definitely one of those. I call it throw the kitchen sink at it singing. That's what happens sometimes with singers, is that we just want to do our very best and we just throw everything at it. That often stacks tension. One of the reasons that you can lose your voice is something called muscle tension dysphonia. And that might be a condition that's related to speaking. So this is something that you can apply to both speaking and singing. Or just simple tension and a constriction of your false vocal folds, which are a protective layer. Did you even know that you had two sets of vocal folds, false vocal folds and true vocal folds? The false vocal folds are a little protective layer, and they tend to engage when we do anything primal that needs a buildup of energy. So we're talking picking up something heavy, coughing, sneezing often, bearing down to give birth, or pushing out a poo. Let's be honest, we're all friends here. So these primal triggers for this protection mechanism, because we've got to take one step back and say the larynx, which houses our vocal folds and helps to make sound, also is a valve for breathing and for redirecting to make sure that food does not come into our passageway, our airways. So the main function of the larynx is breath. We've evolved over time to engage our vocal folds to produce sound. And so we're kind of fighting this primal battle where any tension, primal tension, correctly triggers the false vocal folds, and they kind of close up so that you can have a little buildup of pressure to assist you with lifting something heavy, to assist you with bearing down. So if you ever pretend like you're going to pick something heavy up and you go, you can hear that sound of constriction, and you feel it in other areas of your body as well. So it's understanding that when you need to pick something heavy up, yes, you might need to engage those, but be mindful of the effort levels that you are using at all times. Because if you need to only use, like, let's say, assign it an effort number on a scale of 1 to 10. If you only need to use a little effort of 5, it causes excess tension if you dial it up to 10 unnecessarily. Like, to demonstrate me picking something heavy up, I could either go, or I could go, and you can still hear what I'm doing and you can hear the effect that I'm going for. but there are varying degrees of tension. Potentially the level 10 tension is causing a follow-on effect and potentially some long-term damage. It might be training my muscles in a way that I don't want them to respond long-term, and certainly not when I'm singing. So what I just described are primal uses for your larynx, that protective mechanism. Singing a high note is not a primal emergency. You are not needing to bed down for childbirth, push out a poo, or cough, right? So I want us to consider releasing tension and only working at an effort level that is the right level for you. Now, I have some other videos on this, which I will link in so that you can understand a little bit more about effort and how to avoid working too hard when you're singing. So that tension, releasing that tension, firstly at the source of the sound, but also let's get holistic about it mentally, physically. So I have a singer stretches video to make sure that your entire body is warmed up and ready for singing. And by warmed up, I mean tension is released. You can certainly go for a walk to engage your breathing muscles and make sure they're relaxed. But the key is be mindful of tension at the source of the sound, but also the surrounding muscles, and make sure that you relax that, and also keep a clear mind. I use meditation, little extras, and massage. So keeping tension at bay, monitoring your effort numbers, that is a really great way of avoiding excess tension or unnecessary tension. That can end up causing muscles to overwork, which can then lead to you losing your voice. If you're losing your voice consistently, and I'm talking about hoarseness, you feel like you need to clear your throat regularly, or you just have some kind of uncomfortable sensation, a feeling in your throat that lasts for 2 weeks or more, you definitely want to go and see a specialist, either an ear, nose, and throat doctor. You might need a referral from your GP, your general practitioner first, or ideally a laryngologist, say that 10 times fast, that specializes in singing. And there are a lot of, certainly here in Auckland, there are a couple that are top notch that understand high voice users, specifically singers or actors or anyone that uses their voice, often at different extremes, because that's what singing is. You're exploring your voice and looking for techniques that support being able to tell the stories that you want. And so I'm kind of leading a little bit and hinting at the next two things that you need to be mindful of to avoid losing or permanently damaging your voice. Vocal health is the next one. This one is super essential. Again, because you're looking, your instrument is housed in your body, you want to be looking after your whole person, but also you want to be looking after the specifics of vocal health. And so I look at them from two ways. There's an active and there's a reactive. So active vocal health involves daily vocal care habits, little things that you can do every single day. And what I do are sirens when I wake up in the morning. Before I start speaking, I'll often just do them in the shower. And that helps to stretch my vocal folds. That gets my voice ready for speaking use throughout the day, and also gives me a chance to check in. And so I suffer from quite severe hay fever, and often I might get a little bit of swelling on my vocal folds because I'm like clearing some gunkies out, or there's something that's stuck and I feel like I need to rattle those dags, is what I call it. That's a very Kiwiism, by the way. And what you want to do is just use those sirens to either get that pliability happening, stretch out your voice, and essentially do a wake up for it. Then I will do some singer's stretches, which are just very basic stretches, but targeted towards the muscles that often hold most tension and impact our voices. And I'll link to my singer's stretches video here as well. And then you want to do something like either be mindful of your speaking voice throughout the day, whether you're about to practice, sing, rehearse, perform or not. Look after your speaking voice, because that's the voice that we use the most. Same mechanism, it's still our larynx, but sometimes we kind of wear a different hat when we speak and we're not quite as mindful as we could be. We'll use those extremes, whispering, shouting, and that's what you want to really monitor. You want to be sure that, especially if you've got an important performance coming up, the 3 days leading into that, you are really mindful about your speaking voice. And then those reactive, I should say, tools that you can use are things like adding stuff in. So steaming, salt gargling. For me, it's nasal irrigation because I suffer from hay fever issues. You could also do a practice that helps you to get ready. And this is kind of leading into the next step, which is having a solid practice plan to engage in healthy, functional, efficient singing techniques that help you to produce sound and in the best way possible. So yeah, there are lots of little daily vocal care habits that you can roll in. Some of the reactive ones are also if you've lost your voice. I'm going to put a link to a blog post that I've got that's titled, I should say, How to Get Your Voice Back. Plus, I will put a link to my Vocal Health Tips for Singers Guide, and you can grab that. It'll talk a little bit more about being conservative with your voice at rehearsals, making sure that you have some techniques that let you perform when you're practicing at, let's say, 50%. So you're still hitting your mark. The band or whoever you're working with can still hear what you're doing. You are still exercising your larynx in the exact way that you need to be able to practice, but you're not leaving your best voice in the practice room, the rehearsal room, or the green room before you go on stage. And that also involves knowing how to warm up your voice effectively, knowing how to warm down your voice effectively, and then that speaking voice mindfulness that happens throughout the day. So I kind of talk about it like a vocal wake up, and then you can move on to like a vocal warm up, and then a vocal workout, depending on what you're working on. And so the last thing is being really mindful of singing techniques. So knowing how your voice works primarily, let me give you a quick 101. You have the air or your breath that comes from your lungs and powers your vocal folds, which is the source of the sound or generates the sound. And your vocal folds vibrate and a sound wave is then moved into your mouth and your nasal passages, which is your filter, or some people like to call it your resonator, and that then is chopped up by your lips, your tongue, your teeth, and jaw into words, syllables, and sounds, depending on what you're doing. And so these three areas need to work together. They need to be working together consciously, and you need to understand what the individual moving parts are so that they are almost like ingredients in a recipe. And then you can create firstly and foremostly, a safe and efficient sound. And secondly, you can start to craft your own signature sound. Because when you know all the moving parts and you know what sounds they produce, that gives you control over being able to make the sounds that you want to make. So not only are you avoiding losing or permanently damaging your voice, you're learning some great skills that help you to be unique as a singer. Because at the end of the day, we're all already unique just by simply waking up. And then you want to take the tools that you've got, learn how to use them, and craft them into your own unique storytelling. Because essentially singers are storytellers. If you've got a compromised instrument, it's really a lot harder to tell the stories that you want to tell. You're kind of hamstrung by what the restrictions are on your voice. So looking after your voice, making sure you don't lose it or permanently damage it through any of these singing or through any actions that you have control of, or at least giving your body the best fighting chance, because when you get sick, you get sick. There's very rarely anything you can do about it. And on that note, if you do lose your voice because you're unwell, I would highly recommend that you avoid singing. I know it's not the thing that people want to hear, but I would say get some vocal rest in. If you can move the gig, move the gig. Alternatively, if you are in a position where you have vocal tracks that you can add into the mix, mime that sucker out and just hit your mark from a performance perspective. Vocally, let the tracks take care of you. And this is done all the time. This is not a cop-out. This is you being strategically conscious of the long-term efficacy of your voice and your performance abilities. So we're not copping out. We're delivering. We're turning up. Our energy is high. We're performing. But we're being smart about the use of our voice. Because, like, if you're sick, you're sick. You know, there's nothing you can do. So proactively look after your vocal health as best as you can. Look after your body as best you can, because it houses your instrument. And I'm not talking about like getting on the shred or anything like that. I'm talking about the basics of immunity and hydration. Get enough sleep. Make sure you move your body through stretches, release tension. And that's the first point. So to summarize, to avoid losing or permanently damaging your voice, release tension right throughout your body. Make sure that your vocal health is in excellent condition, and then get some singing techniques that you know will serve you to strengthen the stamina, the control, your agility, all of the elements that make storytelling as a singer much more easy. So I hope you found that helpful today. If you have questions, please comment, because every week I do answer questions and I really enjoy doing them. I'm pulling from my students' questions, but I also will take anyone's questions that get thrown at me. If you have not yet subscribed, please do that. If you're watching this on YouTube, because this is live to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. If you're on Facebook, hit the Big Notes Get Votes like button and follow that as well. Hit the notifications button on YouTube, because I'm coming live over this month, a lot with these questions. And I'm also rolling out 3 singing habits that you can focus on in the next 3 days. And so if you're concerned about your voice, or you want to strengthen and be proactive about your vocal health, you need to be seeing those, plus checking in the comments for the resources that I mentioned today. I hope you have an amazing day. I hope you look after your voice. And remember, most importantly, this is the biggest tip of all. Like I said right at the beginning, please see a medical professional if you have any concerns about your voice. Side note, you can also get a vocal warrant of fitness for your voice, which is like a checkup. It's like if you had a car and you're about to go on a long journey, you'd be checking your tires, you'd be making sure the oil was okay, so that you know that you've got the goods and you're safe and healthy in that car leading into your journey. And that's the same with singers. Get a vocal baseline checkup. And that involves whether just going to your doctor, getting a referral for a scope, if you can, and then going and getting that baseline done, and maybe seeing if there's any even physiological unique oddities, and I mean that in a unique way, that you can work to rebalance. So like, say, it's almost like having, sometimes the vocal folds can be slightly asymmetrical, like the most of our body. And it's about understanding how your voice works and what techniques you can use to help bring your vocal folds together to make that really efficient sound. So yes, look after your voices. Let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Now, if I am on tour, I will still record an answer to your question. So do be sure to comment below, and I look forward to answering your question soon. Have a great day.